just make sure that you stay
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Chris. I'll be your host today, and I'm alongside Jason Flores here at the umpteenth running of the women's race here on ODZ. So excited to see you guys this morning. And we are here on Watopia Island. Good morning, Jason. How's it going?
Good morning, Chris. I am excited to be on. We did miss one installment of this, but I am excited to be back. We've got good numbers in the pen, so it looks like it's going to be a great race today.
It does. It looks like we've got some really good riders in this group, and I'm excited to call some of their names. In fact, now that I've met some of them in the real world, they're not just avatars, and they do not have all pixelated hair. Well, some of them do. But if you're joining us here, this is Zwift Live. This is the home for Justin Wagner's Heavy Breathing. But that's not all we bring you today. We're going to bring you the women's race here on Watopia Island, and this one never disappoints. And so we'd like to encourage you to reach out to us on social media today and tell us what you think of this wonderful event. Now, you'll see that there are some folks here that you'll recognize. There are some women who have done this race many, many times in the past, and some folks, including Taya Freestead, who is really slated to be a top finisher. But I'll ask my guy, Jason, who do you think has a really good chance of finishing high on the podium today?
There are a lot of names, like you said, and one thing I did want to point out is a lot of these riders have been doing the MTB challenge, and so a lot of people are coming up through the ranks, Chris. There is riders like Liz Conley, Alex Alexander, and also I saw a couple of names were already Jansen and one other rolling through. I'll come up with one more here.
All right.
But definitely some new names that we haven't seen in the front of the pack that I think we're going to see in the front running today.
That is awesome. Now, as we're coming in to do this course here, this is one of our favorite courses. I don't know how it's safe to ride over the lava like we are right now, but it's definitely something that you can only do in a virtual world like this one. Now, the group is all pretty much together here. They're trying not to stay ahead of the beacon here. We've got the commissar on course, and he'll signal when it's time to go. We've got him on the audio channel here, so we'll hear him clearly in just a moment. Now, this course is the volcano circuit, and not the volcano flat, and I've selected that many times incorrectly and gone, hey, why am I leaving this area? But this is round and round. It appears to be relatively flat, but it's got one significant kick and then a long false flat that can give riders a lot of trouble, especially if their power is just a little bit lower than the people that they're chasing. But what do you think really is the secret to success on this course, Jason?
So there are a couple kicks here, and like you said, it does look like it's completely flat, where there are a couple kicks that you and riders need to make sure that they're on as they go up, that they are part of this group. More important to beat riders than ever to make sure that they're with the group ahead of them. And looking at the list, we have a large group of B riders today, Chris, and I think that's where a big part of this race is going to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, it is not the most, well, maybe it is the most interesting course out there. There's lots of bubbling cauldrons. We'll call this part the caldera. You come through the caldera in two different areas, so it can be a little visually confusing. But we'll try to catch this group as they come out. I'll try to do a good job of locking into the visuals here so that it is interesting for us to watch here. But you see the group all together now doing a nice job staying together. What a beautiful tropical location that would be fun to visit if it were a real place. But in this group, we've got riders of different categories. Now, it's interesting to see, since we have not broadcast this race, since the update in the interface to allow for different categories and different visualizations. Can you talk about what is different for us visually in this event today than may have been in previous viewings?
You will find that there are actually very few to no other riders on course. So what we'd be able to do is get rid of some of the traffic that we have, or that ability of other riders to jump on other groups that may be racing on a very busy course, just like the volcano circuit is.
Yeah, it is a very busy course. Lots of people in the world today. As we would always expect on a Saturday morning, even in the summertime, UK, US, Canada. we would still expect to see quite a few people in on Saturday morning trying to get a good ride or a good race in, and that is the case here. So we're getting close to the start of this thing. We've got the Commissar who's going to kick this thing off for us over the shoulder of Alice Alexander right now. She is one of our really, really storied riders in this group. We'll give you some of her stats here in a little bit, but as we get ready for the start of this thing, we can hear that train coming down the tracks. What do we expect to see at the very start of this event, Jason?
Just like any race, what we typically see is a big surge. And this is a chance for both B, C riders to catch on to this front group and make a difference in their placing moving forward. And so if they're able to put this surge out for this first 30 seconds, for this first minute output, and able to place themselves in good position, it can really help them in the final numbers here. And so we're going to see this surge right as they come through, but it's going to be super flat today, Chris. So they're really going to need to create the watts in order to make sure they stay with this group as they come out of the Caldera today.
And they're being careful here. You'll see them bunch up as they come up and over this little puncher. This is the one significant rise in the course, but it is enough that if you attack it, you can get separation. What follows it is this kind of false flat kind of a piece up to the actual start banner, and that can give riders a lot of trouble, especially as they've got a little bit of lactic in their legs. But you've been talking about some of these riders doing some extra training with the FTP Challenge over the last little bit. We'll talk about that in a second because I know that we're getting close to the start. We want to make space available for the Commissar to give us those details as we go. But everyone is supposed to stay behind the beacon, Taya Freestead, and it looks like they are doing it. Now, you don't want to get too far behind, but as you can see, as we look at the course right now, up and over the this little false flat here, it looks like zero pancake flat, but we're about to start this rise. We're starting to see it already. That look in the distance here. This can be really, really tricky if your legs are totally loaded. All right, so we're going to open this up in just a moment for the Commissar. He seems to be in the group right here. We were viewing him just a moment ago. We'll go over the shoulder of Taya Freestead. They all want to stay behind her. Looks like they're going to do that, and we've got them coming up and over.
Go, go, go. Race is clear. Go, go, go.
And everyone behind the beacon at the start of this thing, we saw it on the screen, types go, go, go herself. As we look over her shoulder, she is pushing hard. Now, I don't see another A rider on her wheel immediately. They spread out really, really quickly, Jason, and they are one long line. Now, the next person, Alice Alexander, trying to pull back the leader here, Taya Freestead, and it looks like she's going to do it. Levang comes around the B rider. She gets a big push over and around, and we'll jump on her wheel, and it looks like she is going to actually maybe not quite get away. Carrie Conabear right there, the British rider, doing a nice job. Now, as we see them overhead, they're coming up and under the rock here. Taya will never be able to escape the visual of the other riders. That is one of the problems of being the host here. She always wears that cone of awesome. As we look over her shoulder and Alice Alexander's shoulder, we see that they are just now fighting to get in a group together. I think that that's what's going to happen. We're going to see the groups form almost immediately. But as you see this group starting to form, it's easy to tell who's got the opportunity here at the beginning. So, Jason, as we look around this group, Levang, Coke, Conabear, Alice Alexander, Green, kind of all in this tight-knit group at the beginning. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that this group is doing the smart thing and finding riders to ride with. But I've gotten a report here, Chris. My audio might not be going to Zwift Live, so if you can double check that. It's going through Discord, but not through to Zwift Live, so if you could check that for me. And I will talk more about these 5 riders here.
Yep.
So we've got Freestead, Conabear, Coach, Levang, and Alexander. And we've got just a small group off the back. There's 4 riders. That's Scott, Green, Jansen, and Phillipson. They're only 1 second off. If they can close that gap, we've got a nice, solid group of 10 to 12 riders to really make this gap go, and really solidifying this essentially break of this large set of group of riders that can really use the draft in the flats and really push each other coming up on the little bumps that will allow them to increase their distance between the group behind them, which now is about 7 seconds, Chris, and that is pretty significant on this course.
It is significant on this course. You're absolutely right. Helen Salt is leading that group, and if she's just left that group, well, they're going to come with her. Helen Salt, Toledano, and Liz Comley in that chase group. That's a group that should be up there with with them, and they got separated just somehow, and they're going to have to work together and make sure that they're putting in the time. But you know what? It looks like they can do it. Helen is really doing the hard turn at the front there. Her heart rate is really high. She's in a collection of 5 riders, and we're following her presently. It's still getting larger and larger, and she's doing the big work on the front. Needs one of those other women to pull around and do just a little bit more, because they are. That gap is growing. Dropped another second right now, but if that will happen as you come up and over this this rise as the front group slows down a little bit. But I'll expect to see that gap open right back up to 9 seconds here in just a moment, and it did. Now, as we look overhead, we can actually see the distance between these groups. We've got the lead group here, which looks like to be about 7 or 8 riders. That's a really nice sized group. You would not agree that it's a nice sized group if in fact you are in the group chasing that group now about 10 to 12 seconds back. I hate it when that happens, but that is bike racing, and what you can hope for now is that there'll be a bunch, which is exactly what's happening right now. They're just a collection of riders. They're not a long straight line. They're coming down the hill. This is an opportunity for this chase group, Helen Salt, Liz Comley, to do a big push. Looks like Roadrunner is now in this group. They have brought back, it's about a 15-second gap here, but we definitely have a second race forming right here. Now, what is it that these folks have to know if they have any chance of catching this group, Jason?
All right, so moving back, now the strategy goes like this. They've got 14 seconds now, and they've got a good group of, I'm looking at 6, 7 riders in this group. They need to work together. When they get onto the front, just like H Salt is, they need to push the pace. They need to put it up at 4.0, 3.5 plus, and really push the pace in order to catch this group. As each person gets on the front, they put 4.0 plus on, the next person comes through, and that is how you're going to close the gap. 5 riders is more than enough to close this 15-second gap that it is right now.
It's very true, and you know what? They're coming up on really the most effective strategic location on the course, which is this big push right here. So my suggestion is always to take advantage of whenever you have the most potential change in overall speed. And as the Freestad group comes up and over, they are holding about 17 miles an hour. That means that the Salt group has got to get up to 20 and maintain 20 coming up and over this. And it looks like she's doing it right now. They're really pushing really hard, but they've got to make sure that they keep that speed up. Now, the watts per kilo are less important when the rise changes like this. I mean, they end up being factored into the math, of course, but it's that closing speed that matters most. You want to be able to keep that speed higher than your competitors up there. Now, the average speed up here on the flat inside this is about 25 for this lead group, and it's got to be probably 26, 27 if they want to pull them back at all. The gap is now 18 seconds. Now, we have a couple people in the gap here. As we look ahead, Kala has been dropped off the back here. Kala has had some real success in this race in the past, Jason. She's finished 4th in a couple of different events, and she has a silver medal, not in this race, but in a different. She's a Masters rider as well, not just a veteran, but she is caught in the gap here. Now, Helen and her group and Roadrunner, Liz Comley, are going to circle her and say, let's bring her in. She's a strong rider. The confetti flies as we jump back up. But she is the gal in the middle there right now. So as we look at this group, we do a little bit of a rundown on it. We've got Jansen, we've got Koch, we've got Scott. I find it really interesting, almost hard to judge here, the way that names are scrolling now. They start at the back side and then scroll forward. So sometimes if there's too many initials in their title, it's hard to read who they are. Phillipson in there as well. Koch, Conabear, Alice Alexander, all in that lead group. What do you see as far as strength in there? We've got quite a few B riders.
Yeah, so my eyes are on these B riders because I know these names are actually in, like I said, and we were talking about earlier, in the FTP challenge. So these are riders that are actually at the end of a rest week, Chris, and you know, at the end of a rest week, your legs feel ready to race. And I did give them flags that said you will not have to do one extra workout this week if you race this race. So that is why they're all here ready to race.
That is awesome. I can speak to that myself because I have been at the end of a rest week for about 1.5 years now. And I love it. I do. I always feel ready. I always feel ready. Okay, so we do a quick rundown right here. We've got Carrie Conabear, Taya Freestead, Green, Levang, Jansen, Koch, all in that front group. Also, Phillipson, Scott, and Alice Alexander. That is your lead group of 10, or rather 9 riders, because we've got the soigneur in there as well. That is the rider that we have off the front to make sure that we get a proper finish here at the race. Lots of things behind the scenes here. Now, this FTP challenge, what kind of moves have you seen in overall FTP for these folks over the last challenge period?
So since we've only done our initial FTP and people really establishing it, what I've seen is just the reaction that people have had doing their workouts, that sweet spot workout, those VO2 max workouts, and how things have gotten not so much easier, but manageable. And they're able to, as the week goes on and do their normal rides and races, they're able to more easily manage those paces that it requires here on Zwift very differently than it does anywhere else to manage that high level of threshold power and be able to stay on these groups just like these B riders are right now.
Yeah, so if somebody is new to this, I mean, they may not understand what FTP is or VO2 max or SSTs. Can you just give us a sense, first of all, what is FTP and why does it matter?
Yeah, so simply, if you think of it this way, is you could go as hard as you could for 60 minutes. That number or that effort is the number that you want to train off of. And so different varying percentages of that number will allow you to have increases in your fitness. For example, if you ride a long period at this threshold we call, or FTP, you would be able to gain aerobic fitness or your ability to go for a long period. If you were to ride above that, it would fall into the area of wanting to sprint or hill climb or that sort of thing, and that falls into the VO2 max category. So very simply, it just allows us to categorize the different levels of power in order to train precisely to get the fitness that we're looking for the ride or the race that we're trying to do.
Excellent. And it's possible to increase that number. It's not just a genetic number that you're just stuck with.
No, absolutely not. I think some of them are, but I think more so you want to maximize your potential or your genetic potential, and that's one thing that we look for and that we have riders look to do as they go through a period or you know, a block of periodization of training, that is, or a couple weeks of training, let's say.
Excellent. Now, I just want to point out a couple of the details here in the group. Now, we've got this lead group going right here, and the Helen Salk group now 40 seconds back. We're putting her name on that group, but I look back and she has made a solo attempt to get away from that group. Behind her, Liz Comley, Roadrunner, are just together there, fighting together. Behind her, a little bit further, we'll do a rundown in just a moment. The Team Moose collection there in that back group, but we have an uncharacteristically large group here at the front, which doesn't bode well for anybody chasing. But you know what? They don't care. They're going to try to get a better lap time than they did previously. This is a great course for being able to stay individually focused, even if you're not with the full group. So if you'll join me with your eyes just for a second, Jason, on these riders right here. I'm very interested in talking about the equipment that they are racing on today. So as we look through here, we tend to see a couple of different bike setup and wheel setups, and I want you to maybe speak to the value and importance of these different collections. I'm looking at Brown right now, who is a C rider who is in this main group. Now, it looks like she's actually being lapped at this point, but she's jumped in with that main group, almost Criterium style. Emily Brown from the UK. And she's running, it looks like, a Specialized bike and Zip wheels. Can you just talk a little bit about this virtual bike selection?
Yeah, so it's a really unique setup and a really great way that the game or Zwift has put together a way to gamify or the ability to increase the levels as you get experience points or as you ride more and more in the game. So for example, we see a couple bikes that have like glowing wheels. We have some bikes that we know from kind of our everyday riding. We've got the S5 and that sort of thing. So as you ride more on the course and you accumulate miles or experience, you actually can unlock different kinds of bikes. So the original bikes would be like the Zwift Aero bike and the Zwift Classic bike, which is a full steel bike. And then as you get more points and as you earn different challenges, you're actually able to open up bikes like the Specialized Allies, and you know, doing other challenges allows you to open up a whole gamut of bikes that you see here, including the Pentamum Tron bike, the glowing wheels bike here, Chris, which takes a good amount of time for anyone. So anyone that you see riding around is definitely been on this platform for a long time and doing some hard work climbing, because I believe it takes, what is it, 5 climbs of Everest or more to do that?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it took me about 6 months, and how curious it was that we were so invested in such things. But it's the glowing wheels, are initially identified as the Zwift experimental, shown off by John, the lead programmer and brainchild behind this, John Mayfield, in an early photo, and then all of us clamored to figure out what it took for us to get it. And once we realized what it took for us to get it, went out and climbed just about everything. So as we're looking at Alice Alexander's bike right here, as she's got a Trek bike that she's on, she's changed the color of that to green. Right next to her is Kala, and she's in the pink version of same. But you'll notice that they're running different wheels. The Zip, it looks like 505s are what Alice is running here. We've got Kala. Looks like she's running the Bontrager wheels, which is really interesting. Maybe 300 or 30 millimeter. Wheels here. What would be the value of selecting one or another of these wheels, either in real life or in the game? Why does it matter?
So a lot of the decisions that are made in real life have to do with 2 things: weight and aerodynamics, and a lot of it goes the same in the game. So we've heard a lot of the programmers talk about it's a very simple aerodynamic calculation. So as you get up to a deeper section wheel in a long straight or in a windy section, aero typically wins out. The more aero wheel, as you'll notice, all the girls here in the peloton will have a deeper section wheel for this type of course. Alternatively, for example, if you are climbing, you may want to choose something a little bit lighter, and there are very short Zip 202s that you can use that are about 20 millimeters, and in real life you'd want to choose something a little bit smaller. That way you're able to use that weight and bring that bike and that rider up the hill. But in this situation, in the criterium situation, more and more, over and over, science is showing aero overall. So 808s are going to be the wheel to go if you've got them in real life. If you've got them in the game, you put them on. And if you have them on the trainer, it makes you even faster, Chris. Can you imagine?
It does. And here's the thing about these, high aero wheels is, right, we talk about rotating mass, right? And here's been my experience. And I have basically a set of 30 mils and a set of 50 millimeters. And what I always have found is that that higher rotating mass, right? There's more mass on the outside of these wheels. It takes a little bit longer and a little bit more energy to spin them up. However, once they're up to speed, they're highly economical. Meaning, if I'm racing them in a crit and I come out of a corner and I've got the equivalent of 505s, right? My 50 mil wheels, that they stay spun up and going really fast with a little bit less energy. They cost more energy to get them and require a little bit more power to get them moving, but once moving, they hold that energy. They maintain much more momentum and velocity once they're spun up. So we're looking at Amy Levang right now, the B rider from the United States, and she is running traditional wheels, shallow wheels, almost the aluminum style wheels. Now she's on a Specialized bike. It's a very nice looking Specialized bike, I'll point out. She has matched it to her kit, which I think is extra pro looking, but she's running these thin wheels in a group of folks who are running these bigger wheels. Do you think that has anything to do with the potential of this little climb that they're coming up right now?
I think it does have a small factor, Chris, but I think more so with this group so large, the aerodynamic gap or the window that you can ride in, if you are not on the front, it makes less of a difference the further back you are from the front. So she is playing smart, and as if you notice, she's kind of following wheels and making sure that she's got 1 or 2 riders ahead of her so that she's got that window. So it really won't make a difference until the climb. Like you said, she can utilize that and get up there just that little bit quicker.
You know, maybe it's just my imagination, but so we're locked in on her on the view right here. As she climbed up that little section, she was holding about the same 4.7 watts per kilo as was everybody else. And she actually advanced just slightly through that group. Carrie Conabear was actually the one who passed her, but she was doing at least 1.5 watts per kilo higher than Amy was doing. I just find that so interesting that they've got these little things. Now, Amy is fighting for position here. They're getting really stretched out as they come up and over right here. We're going to do a quick rundown so you know where all of your favorite riders are. Now, we may not click through and see each of these, but here we have at the front of the race just a moment ago, Kala. Excuse me, we just had a refresh. We've got Patricia Koch right there, Taya Freestead, Inga Jansen, Carrie Conabear, Amy Levang, Alice Alexander, excuse me, Z Kala right there, Kristen Green, and Scott rounding out that top 10. In the next group, well, she's still with this group, Roxanne Phillipson. She is also in this group. Then in the gap in no woman's land back there, almost back to the group. She's doing an incredible turn of work back there. Helen Salt, Roadrunner, in the chase group with Liz Comley, about a minute back of this lead group. We've got Quirk there. We've got Toledondo, Team Moose, Ansari, Nafe, and Emily Brown rounding out the top 20. Behind her, we've got Nescimento and Shine chasing. It doesn't look like we've got Shine moving at all. She's at the start-finish banner. I think that means that she did not leave the gate or is just watching, maybe even broadcasting with us. But that's our group today. Okay, so as we look at this lead group here, I'll call on my guy Jason to give us an accurate description of how much further we have to go.
So I am actually pulling that up, and it looks like we have about 1.5 laps to go. I'm double checking the numbers. Our front rider has 1 lap, so that we are on coming up on lap 4. Okay. As the group comes through.
No, excellent. And you know, the system has changed a little bit here. And they've given us some additional tools, which you described a little bit at the beginning, to organize different events. But for those of us who put on races and are interested in the racing scene, the virtual racing scene, the esports associated with virtual cycling and Zwift, what additional options do we have now that we didn't have before? And how does that affect what we can do in these types of events?
Yeah, so we did speak to a couple of, or at least one of them, which is you notice that normally there would be hundreds of riders on this circuit, but in fact today it's actually just our 23 riders as we come through. But here's the opposite. If you are outside of the module, you could actually see all this race come through, but the riders that are in the module can only see those in the module. That is a choice as a race leader, as a race organizer, that you can use to make it feel more, I guess, exclusive, to almost having the world all to your own. The second thing is you could actually divide categories. If you wanted all the categories to only race against each other, you could actually categorize A, B, C, and D riders to allow them to race against each other and only see their messages and only see those riders. So that's definitely a very interesting ad. Between those two, those things that we have been waiting for to essentially organize as broadcasters or allow us to get a better look without getting mismatched or grabbing someone who's not in the module, it allows us to kind of hone in on the actual race, which we are today.
And so say, for example, one of the things that it eliminates is we've always talked about catching those elevators as they come by. So maybe it's Helen who's is in the chase here. She's trying to pull back the full group here, but not able to completely do that by herself. But some big group comes by, a big group ride, and she can jump on the back of that and use that as an elevator. But what you're saying is in the new module where you can hide other riders, she won't see those other riders and won't benefit from that arrow that comes by.
Correct, correct, and that's what we're looking at. It allows essentially a more clean race, and again closer to emulating, in fact, how it would be in real life race.
You know, and that's an impressive build. It's not something, I think it's something that we all requested along the way, but frankly, I was surprised to see that added as a feature. I mean, that's a hefty piece of programming right there, but it does make a big difference for event organizers. And John Mayfield is famous for saying, "Why would anybody want to ride together?" So the fact that we've got this now in the group, I think the group module makes a big difference. There are a couple of other rumored features that are coming up here. We've got one lap to go here that I think are interesting. Which ones are you looking most forward to?
Oh, well, I definitely like this race module, but you know what? One thing that I do a lot of it is, I do a lot of the workout module. And so those additions that they've had, the little tweaks, for example, if riders are here and they push the letter G, you could actually see what zone you're riding in and your heart rate for the last, pass, just like you would in a workout. So when you're in a race, you could actually see your history, which you've never been able to, even on your Garmin or that sort of thing. So I love that feature. People can actually go out and not do a complete free ride. I can ask somebody to do a certain zone or a certain effort, and they could actually look at that. So that's a nice added feature. And workouts are just getting better and better and allowing people to kind of really customize the work that they do here. And about 45 to 49% of the riders are on here doing workouts, if you notice, Chris. So a lot of people are on here for that platform, for this part of the platform.
That is very true. Wow. And Kala with a big push on the front here. She came up and over the hill. She now has 4 seconds on the rest of that group. Alice Alexander, Jansen, also chasing in that group. Carrie Conabear, the BRT rider. She's coming up and over, coming under the stone banner. And it's going to give her 1 to go, 1 to go, 1 to go. We would ring that bell if we had it here, but it would wake up everyone in my house, and we don't need that on a Saturday morning, my friend. Okay, so we've got Kala here off the front. She's coming through the caldera here with a big push. I'm going to try out that, exactly what you were talking about just a moment ago, and I think that that's going to be really cool. That G button you talk about. I'm excited. Okay, so as we look at this group, it looks like she's growing this bigger and bigger, and I'm surprised. There we go. There's the nice with the ringy dingy. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. 1 to go, 1 to go, 1 to go. As we look back over, it looks like a small collection of the willing here, trying to decide who's going to do the job of chasing Kala back. Kala, of course, the Chinese rider who's leading this race at this moment. She's got 6 seconds. Is that a big enough gap to hold to the very end, Jason?
It's going to be close, Chris. This is a short lap, and as we know, she has got some firepower. So if this group wants to catch, they've got to work together at least until the final bit here, because there's no way that they can catch if they do not have coordination. But they're putting above 4.0, so they're putting in the work. Jansen's on the front, 4.1, 4.6. Alice Alexander's next up. She's going 4.1. This 5 riders can do it, but they need to work together so there needs to be a truce until they get to the final bits.
Yep, and boy, I don't know if that's going to be 8 seconds now. And they're looking around at each other, 3.6. I would expect this is a moment where Taya is going to try to get a move on her group right there and get away. Now, she'll never lose that visibility. She's got that beautiful spinning chevron over her head. But she's going to want to try to encourage this crew to bridge up to Kala. This is Taya's real race to win here, although Carrie Conabear also could do the same thing. So maybe she's being really clever here and letting this group and the aerodynamics of this group really bring her back, or saving her firepower for the hill at the end where she's got the most. But Kala is actually making this gap even bigger, holding about 5 watts per kilo. She's coming in the backside of the caldera here. This is not the big finish. You see the lava on both sides, and you think, first of all, that this is not a safe place to ride. Accurate, but you're also thinking, here comes the finish. This is the other side of the caldera. You come in and out twice. So she's going to come in, out, descend down this hill, do the long flat over by the water, and then come up and in for the big finish. And I'm not exactly sure where that occurs. I think it's about 1K to go at the bottom of that hill. Maybe you could inform me a little bit more. But before we do this, let's give you one more rundown, which we always promise to do on this ride. Now, here's what's interesting. It's a little bit mixed up right now in excuse me, Zwift. Zwift Power. We're not seeing it quite the same way that we're seeing it in World. We know that Kala is definitely leading this group, but we also see Patricia Koch, Thea Freestead, Inga Jansen, Carrie Conaber rounding out the top 5. Amy Levang, Alice Alexander. Kala is also in this group, but she's off the front, but currently listed in 8th on power. Kristen Green, Scott round out the top 10. Roxanne, who's still tied in with this group. Philipson, she's right in there. She's the Belgian rider. Helen Salt, Liz Comley, Roadrunner, Quirk, and Karine Toledano, Team Moose, and Zari, Neff, Brown, and Shine, rounding out that top 25 riders that we have in the group here. And Kala is backed off just a little bit here, but she's still got 16 seconds on her folks. Now, as we look over her shoulder, we can see this coming up here. Okay, so Jason, the 1K to go, where is your estimation of where that is? Or maybe you actually know more accurately.
Yeah, so I was just looking it up here, and we do have 1K to go, and I believe it's as we come up into the caldera. So we're going to have to see. We've got our first rider through the gate, so I am about ready to give us the final rundown. But it looks like as we come up and we make that turn in is about the 1K to go. 1K to go.
Okay, so we see the group chasing right here now. Kala at about 3.8 watts per kilo. She's backed it off just a hair. Her heart rate's a little bit lower. Freestead not really making a big move here. That 12 seconds. Okay, she comes up and over. And what'll be really critically important here, and Kala really digs here, is trying to keep her speed up. It will require this chase group to really stay at 22 miles an hour as they come up and over, because that is what Kala is able to do. As we look at Jansen here, looks like she is the lead here, the PTZ rider, trying to do her best to stay on the front, but her speed is not anywhere near where Kala's was, and although the gap seems to have dropped just slightly here, I think that overall speed is going to make a big difference. Jansen with the big move. Taya trying to stay on her wheel, very, very smart here. Is going to stay on the podium today on Jansen and Conaber's wheel. In fact, Freestead saying, pull me back to Carrie here right now. This is what she's got to do. This is the big finish we're coming up to right now. It looks like no one is going to catch Kala. She's going to be able to come under that stone banner by herself without any concern here. And she looks like she's double lapped a couple of different people. So we're going to let her take that first position. And we look over Carrie Conaber's shoulder, and Jansen passes her. Freestead just on her tail right there, only 6 meters back. This is the big move right here. Who's it going to be? And it doesn't look like Taya's going to be able to close that gap. Maybe so, maybe not. Oh, Jansen comes under the banner. Second place, Carrie Conaber in third, Taya Freestead in fourth. Alice Alexander is the next one to come across that line. Scott just behind her, crossing right now. Philipson, Koch and then Philipson are chasing. They got dropped on that last little section, as I would expect would happen to any mortal as they come up and under here. So we'll have the really the top 15 here. How many does that show? I'm trying to remember, Jason. How many spots does that show in the big finish?
It will show up to 16, and then as the other riders come through, it should scroll down. I believe they fixed it. We have 25 riders that started, so we have a good number. So I've got 6 so far. I've got all the way down to C. Scott. The next rider through is probably going to be P. Coach, and then the B rider finished Green versus Philipson, and they've been playing it real cagey here because they know that they do not need to catch the A rider ahead of them. So it's going to be a B rider shootout as they come to the finish, and it looks like Green has just taken it. Had played the smart move and played the smart card, and looks like she took it right over Philipson just by less than a second at the finish line there. But I've got 10 riders here. I've got Kala, Jansen, Conaber, Freestead, Alexander, Scott, Coach, Green, Philipson, and Levang is our top 10 riders here as we round out our top 10 riders here today on the OD Divas ladies race, Chris. It's been a great race.
It has been a great race. This is really, really cool to see. So what I find really interesting is that, you may not be as impressed with this as I am, but I was actually, even after they passed under the banner, I was able to maintain the ability to click back through the different riders, which is not something we've been able to do before these changes. Usually, when you cross under the finish banner, it removes that rider from the visibility of the of the module and you see everybody suddenly. That didn't happen, which I was
No,
really impressed to see.
Yeah, and it does help as far as us broadcasting, and it also helps as you're just trying to give thanks to the riders that were working with you, because as at the end of the race, you know, you could be very red misted, as we call it, or almost like about to kind of phase out, and what you want to do is kind of say, hey, you know, Jansen's going to reach out to Connor Bear and want to give that high five, that virtual thumbs up, and you're trying to click, and all of a sudden you're near the start finish and everyone's standing there. So that little bit of time, even a small window, a couple seconds, you know, 30 seconds gives you a chance to like click over, give them the virtual thumbs up, the high five, the hug, and you say, hey, you did a good job today. Thanks for carrying me to the finish. See you next time.
Right. Absolutely. So this was a really cool event, and really surprising in a way for me, because the majority of the group stayed together the whole time, and it was exciting to see a big group. Unfortunately, very beginning there, Liz Conley and Helen Salt, who we would expect to see an A and a B rider, and even Roadrunner, missed that main group, and that was the big difference for them. We had that lead group of 9 throughout, including Jansen, Conabear, Freestead, Koch, Levang, Alexander, and Kala, who stayed in there. And they gave us an exciting finish there at the end. Tell us a little bit about the conversation that happened in the community there, sir.
I'm sorry, which two you're referring to, Chris? I'm sorry.
No, the chat that was happening outside. You had a nice angle on that today.
You mean outside of the?
The social media chat.
Gotcha. Yeah, so there's been a huge chat about the ladies. There's, you know, we have a lot of other partners that we've been sharing out to, and so the people that have been able to watch this, it's been so much more widespread. It's allowed more and more people to see it. As we go and make partnerships, and the conversation becomes more and more involved, the support that they have, that these ladies have, putting out these efforts has just been huge. You know, we've got over we're almost hitting 1,000 views here. We've got 11 to 15 riders on live. So it's just an amazing conversation that's happening out here. But just kudos and thanks and praise to all these ladies that are really putting a name out there for women's cycling. Okay.
Well, on the horizon, there's lots of interesting events here. Really interesting things happening in the worlds for women. And we'll, if you stay tuned here on Zwift Live, you'll get that as well. I want to thank all of our folks who've been involved in this today, all of the women who make this a great event that we can get up and participate in. Of course, to my host, Jason Flores, who's doing a fabulous job making this event happen, and of course to our commissar, Pat Night Train O'Neill, who makes this possible as well. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.